So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again for Publicate 2020. I'm joined this afternoon by a publisher that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. I'm a massive fan of their work, and so I'm really thrilled to introduce Sam McDowell from Charco Press. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Joe. How's it going? Hello to everybody who's watching.
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, and a huge congratulations to what you've accomplished in such a short time. You've been very busy, and everything looks absolutely fantastic. So, congratulations. I wanted to say that up front.
That's very kind. Thank you for that. So to start with, for anyone who doesn't know, could you just give us a bit of background on Charco and how you began and what kind of stuff you publish?
Sure. So Charco is an Edinburgh-based publisher. We've been going for about 4 years. We're in our 4th year of publishing this year. And our focus is on trying to bring the best in contemporary Latin American fiction to readers of English. So we look for what we believe are authors that are doing something different, doing something exciting, interesting, and are getting some recognition for their work elsewhere, but they've never been available to readers of English before. And then we go through the translation process and make them available over here in the UK and the US, wherever anyone wants to avail themselves of our titles.
Cool. And so could you start by just talking about what is that criteria for choosing those titles you want to translate?
Okay, so we don't when we first started out, we tend to go for titles or authors that were established in their own countries, that had a body of work behind them. So very few of our authors are debut authors. They're authors that have gained recognition. They've won awards, perhaps certainly in their own country, perhaps internationally. A number of them have been translated into other languages, just not English. So we're looking for that sort of a progress in what they're doing and in their body of work. Because when we select an author, we look not at just a single individual title and say, well, that title's really good and that's exciting. We look at the body of work, and we look at the potential to grow with that author here in the UK and with the readers here in the UK and in the US as they progress. So it's really sort of a long-term view that we take around developing and growing. And once we go through that initial effort of introducing an author to readers here for the very first time, you can probably appreciate, it's come out of nowhere. So we want to then have some consistency and continuity with what we're doing. So that's the way we tend to look at it.
And it's because you're now kind of, let's say you're in your 4th year, you're now kind of on your 2nd round of second titles with certain authors, people like Gabriel Cabezon-Camara and I can't think of any off the top of my head.
That's no, a great pronunciation too. Absolutely. So, for example, of the first 5 books that we published, I should say that they were in 2017. 4 of those authors we have published or about to publish second works for. We have quite a high rate of republishing works for authors, or sticking with new works by authors that we've already published. And it becomes very tricky because we only publish 5 to 6 titles each year. So when we're trying to constantly look to publish authors from new countries in Latin America, because there's quite a few to choose from, new authors that we haven't published before, and also publish new titles by authors we have published previously. Trying to jam all that into 5 or 6 titles a year is a bit of a challenge.
And I'd say that there does seem to be kind of similar themes that come up across a lot of your books. Did you kind of go into setting up Charco with those themes in mind? Were you like, we want to publish this kind of book, or is that emerged through the process of working with authors?
Well, I might semi-disagree with you around the theme point there. I mean, I guess in terms of broadly, if we're looking at the theme of human experience of life, love, death, these sorts of big, and all the things that happen in between, but those big sort of big ticket items that we all go through, then yes, obviously I think a lot of what we publish could be put under that sort of a category. But if you break down into some of the the titles themselves. We've got short stories looking at gangsters in the rural areas of Guatemala in Trout Belly Up. We've got quasi-philosophical musings in Fireflies by Louis Sagasti. We have a descent into almost sort of madness for a young mother in Die My Love. There really is quite a variation in what the stories themselves are about, but I think underlying that the core themes and what we are trying to do, I think, is convey this shared experiences so that readers here can pick up one of our books and they read through them and they can identify with some of the emotions or the difficulties that the characters are going through. So I think that's important. It's part of what we're trying to do in terms of building a bridge culturally as well, is to say, well, here's some new writing, but hey, there's people on the other side of the world and they live and feel and think the same way as you and me.
Mm. And so I guess obviously a crucial part of that process is finding the correct translator to do it and working on the translation. What process do you go through to pair an author or a novel to its translator?
So it's a tough one, and that side of it is a constant challenge. But what we tend to look at is a translator that may already have an affinity with the work or the author. So sometimes a translator will actually come to us for the work, and maybe we've already got it on our radar, or maybe we will float an idea around about a title amongst translators that we know, and someone will pop up and say that they're a huge fan of that author. Because you tend to find that if the translator has an affinity for the work and the style of writing, then the chances are you're going to get a better end result in terms of the translation itself at the end. But it is always a challenge trying to find or match the appropriate translator to an appropriate title. It really is a sort of I want to say an art form, but it's more of a bit of black magic, I guess. It's not easy.
And once you've found who you consider to be the right fit, is it then quite a close working relationship between you, the translator, and the author themselves?
It is. So the managing of that whole translation part of the process is handled by Carolina, my partner in the other half of Charco Press, and it's extremely hands-on with the translator themselves. I mean, it can vary between the translators have different ways of wanting to work as well. Some really want to have quite a collaborative approach and have questions floating around freely, and others sort of want to go away and then turn up with the first draft 3 months later. And it's a little bit similar with the authors. Some are I've been surprised actually the number of authors who are really, really intrigued at the process itself. I mean, if authors are so enraptured with words and meaning that they, a lot of the time they get very, very intrigued, interested in the process of translation and taking their words that they've put so much effort into putting together in a certain way with a certain sound, a certain rhythm, and somebody else is trying to turn that into another language. So we get some authors who are involved right the way through the process. Absolutely. Once the drafts are through, then it definitely picks up in terms of intensity, because we then have a copy editing process. Carolina also runs over the works as well, and at that point there is a lot of toing and froing between the copy editor and the translator, and Caro and the translator and the copy editor and the author, and checking for meaning and fact checking. So that sort of stage, things start spinning really, really quickly.
And I guess that process is lengthened even more if you have more than one translator, because I've noticed on Adventures of China Iron and on a few of Ariana Harvich's books, you'll have multiple translators. How does that process differ?
It's largely similar. When you have multiple translators, that can arise from a number of reasons. So it can be anything from the translators choose to work together on things. They really like having that backwards and forwards. I mean, there's a lot of ideas bouncing around meaning, and syntax and music and rhythm of what they're trying to translate. And I need to be clear, I'm not a translator, so I don't be standing here sort of sitting here talking like I'm an expert on translation. I'm absolutely not. So everything I say here is to be taken as my observation and my involvement with a limited degree. So apologies if I've already offended translators out there. It wasn't the intention. Other times, so some of the ones that we've done with Ariana Harwicks, so Carolina has been one of the translators, and she's done a co-translation because English is not her mother tongue. She's from Argentina, and her English is excellent, and she's been living here for 20 years. But there's a rule within translation that you should really only be translating into your mother tongue. So, but in that, the flip side is someone who's a native speaker of the language has a real insight into the slang, into some of the regional differences. I mean, yes, across Latin America, where Spanish is spoken, that's all Spanish, but there's great variations in terminology, in words, in the way that they construct sentences, and certainly in slang. So it's almost trying to take the best of both worlds. It's somebody who's really, really familiar with that and can understand where all of the nuances that are there, and then somebody who is a native English speaker and trying to bring those two pieces together. That's how that comes about sometimes. The one with China Iron with Fiona and Iona is, I think, another interesting one, and again, slightly different. That particular title, The Adventures of China Iron by Gabriela Cabezon Camara, is, it can be read straight as an adventure story almost. It's almost like a road trip across the countryside of Argentina in the 1900s. But it is heavily based on a very, very important poem, epic poem called the Gaucho Matan Fierro, that is just extremely well known and a part of the cultural core of Argentina. Now, Iona and Fiona are both academics, and they specialize in, respectively, literature from the River Plate area, which is Argentina, Uruguay, around those sorts of areas, from the 18th century, and the other one from Argentinian literature in the 19th century. So we have here two experts in the field almost, who are able to not just translate the work, but they understand the significance of the original poem Matan Fierro, and they understand its placement within the culture of that region and what else was happening in terms of literature at that time. So it was I think we're extremely lucky to have two such highly studied experts that were able to turn their attention to this work, and the results have been fantastic.
Yeah, I'd like to just touch on Gabriela Cabezon Camara a bit, because I mean, the first book of hers I read was Slum Virgin, which is the first of hers that you published, and I've since read Adventures of China Iron, and they're both they're beyond fantastic. They're absolutely incredible books. How did that relationship with Gabriela start?
Well, actually, we knew Gabby from before Charco Press started. We were living in Argentina. We actually met her while we were living in Argentina, and the relationships have just sort of carried on. I think around about the same time as we were first starting to have the ideas of starting a publishing business, we met Gabby, we met a couple of other authors, and we just stayed in contact basically. And then when we moved back to Scotland and decided, yes, we're going to go ahead with the project, and we started trying to put together a list of authors that we wanted to take on, Gabby's name was on the list. And she's, you can probably get a sense of it from her writing. She is both very concerned with people on the fringes of society. She's very concerned with social justice, with issues with gender violence, etc. And she's well known and respected in Argentina for her work in that area. But the other part you also get, and I think in her writing that comes through, is there's just a beauty. She just has such a beautiful way of looking at things and looking at particularly at the natural world, and she's just a very enjoyable person to talk to and spend time with in person as well. So and it sort of comes. It's really lovely to see that come through in her writing.
And do you find, like you mentioned, she's very, very highly regarded in Argentina. Did you feel like an extra weight of responsibility publishing her work in the UK?
I would have to say there's a couple of the authors that we have published that are well known in their respective countries, and I think the pressure is not there to really make it work, or you're going to doom yourself forever. First of all, the authors themselves, there's such a smaller percentage of authors that actually get translated into English in other parts of the world. It's a tiny percentage, and therefore they come into this with relatively low expectations, rightly or wrongly, which is actually is helpful, because they're just very excited that their works are going to be read by a new audience, and they're very excited that it's going to be translated into English, because it's an important language. Whether we like it or not, it is an important language. So it's that in itself is a big deal for them, for the authors themselves. In terms of our responsibility with their role, their import in their home country, I think you're kind of starting with a fresh slate when we introduce them into English. Very rarely have they been heard of before in this part of the world. And therefore, again, the pressure's not there, because it's not like people are, we've been waiting for years for someone to translate this amazing author, and you finally do it, and if they don't like it, you run into problems. So I think we escape the burden of pressure of having to make a huge success of these titles and these authors. We still try, we do our absolute best, don't get me wrong. We really do want every single one of them to be successful and to be read widely, and we think they're important in what they're doing and the work that they're producing, but the pressure is not there, I think, to make it happen.
Well, I feel like it's nice to know that the pressure isn't felt, but fortunately the success is there as well. It has followed. So Adventures of China Ryan is the second international Booker nomination you've had. And that's from your first 3 years of work, which is, I mean, maybe I don't know quite enough about publishing, but that's pretty incredible, right? To have those accolades that early on.
I think it's we're pleased with it. Yeah, we're pleased with that achievement.
And what kind of impact does that have on a small press?
Well, the immediate impact is that it gives some credence to what you're doing. It provides some, I guess, some backup that the choices you're making and the as a publisher and editorially must be doing okay. Which is really important, especially we didn't come from a publishing background at all, so we sort of came to this very blind and quite naive, and just with a real desire to make a change and seeing a real need for more works to be made available for English readers to pick up. So to have that sort of recognition in terms of prizes like the International Booker Prize is, I think, a great sign that we're on the right track, and that's I think it's a huge benefit for us in terms of staying the course with what we're doing. And if the second way that it helps, it boosts our profile, which does not hurt at all. And it can boost sales for those particular titles that get listed. You see a bump in sales, which also doesn't hurt. So it's important, and we're extremely we feel like we're extremely fortunate, but also it is, I think, been a huge boost to our confidence that what we're doing is important, and what we're publishing is worthwhile.
Mm. And do you think it's had any impact on the way you go about choosing your titles from now on?
In terms of thinking with things like the International Booker, things
Yeah,
sort of top of the mind
do you
when we're
find
looking at
thinking
something.
like, yeah, is this, this is good, but is it Booker? Like, so that's a really cynical thing for me to say, but it's...
No, it's an interesting question. I think you would probably drive yourself crazy with that. I think we certainly we decide what we're publishing, and then maybe we would look at scheduling around prize entries, but we would never look at a book and assess whether it's Booker standard, for example. And I think you would drive yourself insane very, very quickly if you did that, because it's not in your hands. It's completely out of your control. And you might submit things that you're quite, you're almost like, oh, it's amazing that's made it on the list. It's fantastic. And you might submit other things that you think have got a really good chance, and they don't make it. So I think you'll be constantly chasing your tail. I think the important thing is to stick with the vision, and just march forwards, and then and anything that bubbles up out of the prizes like this, I think you're better off sort of treating that as an added bonus, as it were.
And I guess so. Something else I wanted to touch on was, you talked there about kind of marching on with your vision. You've had something I guess a lot of people might recognize you for, is your kind of aesthetic identity. And we can see from the books behind you that you have quite a very clear aesthetic identity. How did you kind of land on that specific style?
So translated fiction in the UK is represents a very small percentage of the market. I'd say around about 4%. I hear different statistics all the time. So 4% of fiction sold in the UK is translated. And I think historically, it's also had a reputation of being, maybe a bit inaccessible, a bit too difficult, or a bit academic. So certainly part of what we wanted to do, if we were going to be successful in introducing these authors to readers in this country and in the US and elsewhere, is to try and do whatever we can to make things a bit more accessible. So we have these covers that are bright, they're a bit funky, and they're attractive, and they don't look stuffy, they don't look academic, etc. And that I think is one of the first things we decided to do. The second thing, in terms of the keeping that aesthetic similar throughout the range of what we're publishing, is it came partly from the fact that, as I said earlier on, that this is the first time most of these authors have ever been published in English. So they don't have much of a profile over here. So the thinking was that if we had this, you've got a car alarm going off there.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Very distant, that's okay. The idea with keeping the look and feel consistent is that if someone came along and picked up one of these books, an unknown author here, and they enjoyed what they read, that next time they were in the bookshop browsing and they spotted another cover that looked a bit similar, they might decide to take another chance on another one of our titles. And it also helps, I think, until the author's brand, as it were, themselves has enough momentum to stand on its own. The thinking was that maybe that if we had a bit of brand recognition ourselves there with Charco Press, that we could help offset that in the early stages of their English language career, should we say?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my relationship with publishers, is always like it's having someone to recommend authors to you effectively, which is what I feel Charco does. I feel like, when a new author comes through, I wouldn't have necessarily sought out these authors, but because I trust your previous output, I'm able to follow through and read whatever you put out. Yeah. And so do you ever feel, constrained by that aesthetic?
No, no. Maybe we're going to run out of colors one day, but they're all different colors.
Have to do blue again.
Yeah, exactly. It's a subtly different shade of blue. Yeah. But no, I think that's part of the beauty of it, is that there's always a theme that we've got this amazing designer, Pablo Font. He's in Argentina, and he's always able to tease out some little abstract object of imagery that just works really beautifully on the covers, and I don't think we're going to run out of room to move with that, just with the colors maybe, but I'm sure we'll figure that out as we go. So no, it's not a huge concern.
That's good. I you recently posted the cover of Dead Girls.
Yeah,
the Selva Armada book, which is
right.
Really stunning cover.
Yeah, so maybe we have run out of colors because it's almost white.
What can you, so this is published at the start of September.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can tell us about it at this point?
It is. This is an important book in a number of for a number of reasons. First of all, it's the first book that we are going to be publishing both here in the UK and in the US and Canada simultaneously. So we just commenced distribution into North America at the end of last year, and this is the first title that we've been able to bring out in both markets simultaneously. So that's exciting from an achievement on our side. The work itself, though, is it's interesting, but it's extremely important. It covers an investigation into 3 real-life murders of young girls in rural Argentina in the 1980s, and this is when the author Selva was actually growing up. This is where she grew up, so it happened in her region, and it's not like a whodunit type type journey. It's a bit more of a how in general did this come to be? How does it come to be that these girls are getting murdered and the crimes aren't being solved? Femicide is a huge problem in Latin America, in Argentina in particular as well, right through today. So this is going back to the 80s, but it's still a massive problem today. It's a huge, a much larger number of femicides per capita occur in those parts of the world than they do here, and the crimes often go unsolved, or nobody gets punished or goes to jail. Very often it's a family member involved. So this is a journey that the author goes on, and it's a sort of like a journalistic fiction. We've sort of referred to it as, because they are real events, and she does go and speak to real people and string together what happens. But it is a reflection on where things are at with the society, where what are some of the enabling factors that happen within the community, within the families, within the justice system. It's sort of like a series of building blocks that all come together to mean that this problem exists, and it's quite pervasive, and it's ongoing. So it's an interesting almost wake-up call. It's also timely because of the Me Too movement, and there's a movement that started in Latin America called Ni Una Menos, which is not one less, not one girl less, let's not lose anymore, which has gained huge traction, not just across Latin America, it's extended into Europe as well, where you will see large groups of women will gather together, and there's even a song that they'll get together and sing with blindfolded in sort of squares outside of courts or outside of town halls, and it's a protest around gender violence and femicide. So it's also written by, in Selva's style, which anyone who's written the previous work we published of hers, The Wind That Lays Waste, which was actually the debut book of the year. I've forgotten the name of the award. It's the first book award from Edinburgh International Book Festival last year. So The Wind That Lays Waste, anybody that read that and is familiar with Selva's style and her very understated prose will be pleased again to find that the story is put together in this with that same underlying style.
Yeah, I'm really excited to read it. I think it's
good.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you think. I mean, it's still a couple of months off, but I think it's already starting to gain some interest. And
Yeah.
I think it can, in terms of who it appeals to and why. I think it has a lot of different areas there. It's important because of the message, but also the writing is beautiful. So I think it's going to sit well with a lot of people.
And I believe you're doing an event in collaboration with Fitzcarraldo in August.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's to do with Women in Translation Month, which is August, which which has just kicked off, and it's a translating violence is the name of the event, and the translators. So this one was translated by Annie McDermott, who's a UK-based translator. She's done a number of our works. She's in conversation with a translator from a title from Fitzcarraldo, and just talking about these sorts of themes and what it's like to translate them as well, because there are some challenging aspects that present themselves in Dead Girls, as you can probably imagine. So it's going to be a really interesting event to hear them talk through the experience of trying to bring this material into English.
And so Dead Girls is, am I right, this is the third book you're releasing from lockdown?
That's right. We started with Fate, which came out. So this is Jorge Concilio, which was so this is our lineup so far this year. This came out just before lockdown, and then since lockdown has been happening, we've had. Sorry, these are all double up. This is a second book by Concilio he's one of the first that we published as well. So it's the second by Jorge Concilio that we've published. Then we've had Holiday Heart by Margarita Garcia Rabasho, who's always been it's got a big following with her first title, Fish Soup. And this one has been really well received, both by readers and critics as well. Again, second title by one of our authors that we've published. And Luis Agasti has just come out. So that's a musical offering. This is the author of Fireflies, which again became sort of like a little smoldering cult hit. Like we constantly get people popping up and saying they're just absolutely blown away by Fireflies. So they've all come through so far this year. We have Dead Girls coming out next, and then we have two more titles. We have Ramifications by a Mexican author, Daniel Saldana Paris, and then we have Theatre of War by our first Chilean author, Andrea Heftanovich, which is coming out in November. So we, in terms of lockdown, we took a bit of a hit in terms of our schedule, but we are still publishing the exact same lineup that we set up to publish in 2020. Just with a couple of the titles have been delayed a little bit.
That's good. And I should say, I haven't read Musical Offering yet, but Holiday Heart and Fate are also sublime. They're really, really good books.
Oh, good. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, I can't. And just to say, anyone watching, I'll put a link to Charco's website in our bio, so you can go and pick these up. I really recommend you go direct and buy them because they're wonderful. I guess the last thing I just want to touch on, given we're talking about lockdown, something that's come out of lockdown is the Borderless book club, which I've really enjoyed following it. Can you just talk us a little bit about what that is and how that's been? Yeah,
so a small publisher called Charco Press came up with this idea early stages of the lockdown that maybe a few publishers of translated fiction could band together and start an online book club via Zoom. So 6 of us did that to begin with. We sort of got together, figured out the details, and got things up and running. And it was really sort of like intended as a way to keep some contact going with readers, to maintain that during the lockdown period. And it was just very, very well received. We had hundreds of people sign up for it in just within a couple of weeks, and all over the world. And I mean, that's one thing that has, I guess, as a change of thinking that has happened with the lockdown and a lot of events going virtual, is that before you had to, fly authors over, or they had to be traveled to do a book launch, and there was, a lot of organization, and it was only for the people who are in that vicinity to be able to attend. So although the virtual book launches are not quite the same in terms of having that, that huddle of people and being able to hear someone speak live, it does have the benefits of anybody can join in from wherever they are, and we've had people from Indonesia, obviously from UK, US, Canada, but and across Europe, Indonesia, just all over the place join in. So that's been really, really interesting. It's also led to some logistical issues, because we have to make sure we get the books to all these people in time. And for a while there, the mail system, it was very touch and go as to how long, it even would take things to get within the UK, let alone internationally, and quite understandably. So there's a lot of people, who are living the other side of the world, ordering the book a week before the book launch, the book club was going to be happening, and hoping they were going to receive the book and then be able to read it in time. And we have to have a little chat with them about how that's probably not going to make it to them in time. So that was interesting, but it's been, it was so well received. We extended it for a second round amongst the publishers, and some new publishers joined us, Fitzcarraldo and, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the other one. And now I think we're looking at round 3 as well. So yeah, it's been really interesting, and it was a great idea by Pyrini to put it out there, and hats off to them.
Yeah, it has been great. It's been really great to follow along with. Sam, I'm gonna leave it there if that's okay. Just before we go, could you when's the launch for Dead Girls, for anyone who wants to know?
The publishing date is 3rd of September for Dead Girls.
3rd of September, fantastic.
Yeah, I should hold it up again. There you go.
You should. I can look at it again. Sam, thanks so much. It's been really, really great to chat to you.
It's an absolute pleasure, Joe, and best of luck with Publicate and all your hard work. And I hope it goes really well. I'm sure it will. This is it's been looking fantastic to watch all your hard work going on from a distance.
Thank you very much, Sam. All the best.